All right. All right. Good morning. Welcome to the third podcast of the Road to Home Ownership. This is your host, Mary Tracy from Self Improvement Headquarters with Rosemarie Ashley, who is a experienced mortgage expert with over 30 years of experience in the mortgage business. We're going to just summarize the first two podcasts that we did. In podcast one, we talked about pre-approval, and we discussed that is the first step, which is knowing your finances and working with your mortgage originator to know what price point you can really afford and to get a true and accurate pre-approval. Because the last thing you want is for your mortgage officer to overpromise and underdeliver. And, in having that first step on the road to homeownership being mortgage planning and choosing a mortgage originator who takes into consideration the long view of your home as an investment, you make sure the loan you select with your mortgage originator is integrated into your long and short-term financial and investment goals, as well as your payment, equity, and cash flow objectives. If you haven't listened to that podcast, we encourage you to do so as each podcast builds on the information presented in the one before. And in podcast two, we discussed your buying agent and the real estate agent that will have your best interest as they present houses to you. To let you know that you are looking at several agents to see. We mentioned about interviewing them and to let them know that you are looking at several agents to see which one is the best fit. We talked about the types of questions you should ask your agent to make sure that they are listening and willing to look for what you want in a house. Now, this third broadcast is going to look further into that logical next step on the road to homeownership, selecting your search parameters for your new home. So, our question here, Rosemarie, is where do we start?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's important for a family or anybody wanting to buy a home for themselves to take a look at what is it that they need. Location might be the first place they want to start. What's most important? Is it location? Is it house? Is it neighborhood? What are the most important things for each family? So, for example, some people, when I was moving a lot as a child, one of the most important search parameters for my parents was a good school. And so they would, decide which school district was better than the others. And then they would, put that into their search parameters. Um, take a look at your family size. What are your needs now? How long you plan on staying? Do you want to grow into it? What's the potential? Are you looking for a house that's like move-in ready with everything that you want? Or or are you willing to spend some money up front making it, carpeting and painting? Or is this something that it might be a long range project to get exactly what you want? So think about your own needs first. I think that's the first thing. Everybody is different. And then prioritize what's more important. How far do you have to drive to work? How far to your family that you see? How far to your friends? Is the city important? Do you have like ties to a city? Um, and then you want to start looking at, okay, what are the different areas that I might like to live in? So then in each area, there's going to be a wide variety of houses, different kinds of houses. So if, let's say, location is most important to you and you decide you want to be in XYZ subdivision, for example, then you take a look at what are the sales prices in the houses. Well, if the sales price, if you're wanting to be in a really nice neighborhood with excellent schools and city services, generally you're going to pay more money for property taxes. So that's another thing. Once you start looking, okay, I want to live in this city, but property taxes are 6,000 versus 3,000 in the city next door. When I was personally looking for a house, um, I liked the neighborhood, the city I was in. Um, and I wanted to stay around here because that's where my work was. It was easy access to a lot of places. Um, and then I decided what was more important to me. Was it the house that I was living in, or was it the neighborhood? And at that time, it was, like I was thinking about a house, in Grosse Pointe, which is a city away from me, which is double the amount of taxes, and sales price on home, maybe triple the amount of taxes and double the sales price. And there were a lot of good things that I could get in Grosse Pointe that I couldn't get in St. Clair Shores. But I didn't use them and I didn't need them. So I decided what was more important is to have the house the room that I need, the room to build. So, when you're looking at the property taxes, maybe you can't be in this particular city because the taxes are way high. If getting a house, the house, the bedrooms, how many bedrooms do you need? Some people say, well, I need 4 bedrooms. Okay, well, 4 bedrooms is not as easy to find. Then you think about alternatives. Well, if I have a bedroom in the basement, with you can get out of it. Or could I build in the basement? I know one of our houses that we moved into when my parents got divorced. My mom was insistent that all 3 of her kids were going to get their own room. So we ended up building into the basement. We built a big family room. So we basically doubled. I mean, I know not all people have basements, but we do in Michigan. So it kind of doubled the space. So you look at the house. I mean, I was particularly looking at a couple different houses, one that were some were updated and some were outdated. And the ones that were updated, yeah, they were going to cost 30,000 more or whatever. But were they updated the way I wanted it? Probably not. So I opted to go with the house that gradually, I could move in. It was move-in ready. It was real clean and everything was working. And then over time, over the time that I've been in the house, I've made it exactly what I want. So you want to keep in mind, let's see. I covered work commute, proximity to family, city services. Oh, another thing, when you're choosing the neighborhood, you want to take a look at. I got one customer running out and he's looking at houses during the day, and then at night he's going to the neighborhood to see what that's all about. One thing that you might want to look at is the crime rate. Are you, is this a higher crime rate? Crime rate might have something to do with homeowners insurance too. So you're looking at the taxes, you're looking at the homeowners insurance, you're looking at, what you can buy for what you're pre-approved for. And that's kind of tricky. And that's why you need a good lender, because they'll say, okay, you're pre-approved for $350,000 house. But really, what you're pre-approved for is an estimated payment. And like we talked about before, what changes the estimated payment? Well, insurance and taxes. I mean, that's, all else equal, insurance and taxes, or condo association fees or PUD fees. How
Yeah.
much per month are that? And I was talking to one lady and I pre-qualified her for whatever it was. And then she showed me a condo with 400 plus dollars in association fee.
Per
So
month, per month.
yeah. So she's got $400 association fee. That's a whole lot of mortgage that she can't get,
Exactly.
because that again goes into the mortgage payment. And maybe for her the condo was more attractive. I mean, I always tell people, what are you paying for in the homeowners association?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an important question. Some pay
Absolutely.
heat, sometimes electricity, water. If it's a condo, they usually cover all the outside, the roof and things like that, and they usually take care of the lawns and shovel the snow.
Yeah. And it's
And
important, that the condo fees, the homeowner association fees, those are important to consider because not everyone is the same in what services they provide or in what they cover. And there's regulations on what you can do to your property.
yeah, they want to take a look at the bylaws. I mean, some PUDs, planned urban developments, They have bylaws too. I don't think generally as many because they're individual properties, but yeah, neighborhoods and in condos, sometimes they have rules and you want to take a look at the bylaws. And is this going to work for your family?
Right. We lived next door to a neighborhood that had a homeowners association. If when you built the house, you put up a fence, you were allowed to have a fence. If you did not, you were not allowed to put up a fence.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it very, very specific. So if you're looking at a homeowners association, it is really important that you have an attorney available to help you navigate through some of that legalese in those bylaws. Because a lot of times you get into them, get into that perfect house, and all of a sudden the improvement that you wanted to make isn't acceptable because it has to be pre-approved by the homeowners association. Or, in the case of the fence, you couldn't put up a fence because you had already agreed that if it wasn't there originally, it couldn't be put in. So,
Good point. And you speak of fences. You also want to think about your non-human family,
yes, you.
so do you have a fenced in yard if you've
Mhm.
got a dog? Um, is that important to you? What kind of features do you want in the house? One of the things I wanted was a sun porch, you
Mhm.
know. I use my 3-season room all 4 seasons up here in Michigan.
Yeah,
It'd be
almost in one day sometimes.
yeah, that's true. Um, but right. So, that I think that goes on to yeah, so you want to look at the house and yard needs. Um, we were talking about space, living space versus square footage. It's important to realize that above grade, everything above the ground is considered in the square footage. And if it's below grade, if it's any kind of basement, even if you've got outgoing access to it, even if you've got, the whole back open to the lake or whatever, it's still considered a basement. And although those rooms will count in appraised value, and they certainly count in living space, um, that's not, I mean, that's considered part of your living space, but it's not necessarily considered in the above grade square footage living space that that the value is based on. And so that's another thing you want to think of. What style of house works for your family?
Mhm.
We've got, do you need a basement? If you don't need a basement, you might be able to find a house that's less expensive because it doesn't have a basement. Do you need a garage? Do you need 2-car garage? Do
What
um,
about attached or unattached? That
have
makes the difference in pricing too.
does it have to be attached, or do you just need a garage, or you just want a garage? Or like we were talking about fenced in yards, we're talking about basement bathrooms.
Big one,
That
having
that's really important. That
when you have a big family and you have one bathroom, it's really difficult.
when you have a small family with 2, and those 2 people eat at the same time, you need more than 1 bathroom.
True.
So when I was on my search parameters as a home buyer, I said I wanted 2 full bathrooms.
Mhm.
Um, but what I needed was at least 2 toilets. When I was a kid growing up, my grandma and grandpa in their furnace room downstairs in the basement, I mean, it was semi-finished. They had a curtain and they had a toilet in the furnace room. So, I mean, because they lived with 1 bathroom for quite some time. I mean, over the time they did build into it and they got another one, but they had a toilet downstairs. So there was emergencies. You got it. Okay. You think about if you got a family, do you need 2 showers? I mean, if you've got 2 people going out to work at about the same time, maybe so. One of the things, like I have a house with a small bathroom, and then I call it the other one a quarter bathroom. It's the guest bathroom. It is so small. I mean, I got a pedestal sink in it. I got a toilet in it. It's got a medicine. It's a bathroom. Okay. It's a half bathroom, but it's so small, but it works. But would I need, like I said, a shower in my main bathroom? My main bathroom is small. And one of the things that really bugs me is we don't have two sinks.
Mhm.
Now, I didn't really think about it back then, but two sinks makes a difference. More space, so I can be doing my hair, my makeup, and brushing my teeth when he's doing his, shaving. So
Mhm.
those are the kinds of things. But break it down into your wants and your needs. I had I had a cat when I moved into my house and a dog. And my cat grew up. We had a sun porch. And it wasn't, it was just one of those that you put up afterwards. It wasn't like I mean, it was on a slab, on the patio slab, but he was an old cat. And I'm like, I really want that sun porch. I spend a lot of time out there. I find it very peaceful, and my cat loves it because he's not allowed outside.
Right.
So, I mean, I ended up getting a really nice sun porch, man, totally built, insulated, stuff like that. So you got your wants and your needs. Like I said,
Mhm.
I wanted two bathrooms. I got 1.5, and it works. And you also want to think about how long you're going to stay there, and nobody knows, but at least you got a game plan, you
Right.
know? So if a newlywed couple wants to buy a house and they're thinking about in a few years, they're going to start a family. Um, do they have to move in a few years if they have a baby right away in 3 years, whatever?
Right.
Or is the house, can you adjust it? Do you work at home? If you work at home, are you going to have office space? What can you do? Um,
Big one, especially now.
especially now.
Mhm.
So all those little things, how long are you going to stay? Well, what does that matter? Well, it matters, but because you want to get a house that's going to meet your needs. Do you want to have to move in 5 years, to get a second barrel? Or is it something you can build up? What's the potential of the house? These are all the things that you want to do some serious soul searching
Mhm.
before you start going out and actually physically viewing the properties. I mean, you can do a lot online these days. You can, see what the houses have. You can compare the prices for what you get in the different cities. You can look up the taxes. So you can do a whole lot of homework,
Mhm.
because otherwise, I mean, maybe location's not important to you. Okay, as long as I can get to work in 30 minutes, I'm okay. Well, you can live in a lot of places if you got 30-minute drive, right? So
Right.
then now break it down. Okay, so what's more important, the house or the neighborhood or the city? And then start breaking it down from there. But just start with what's most important to you. Are you going to be able to grow into it? You're going to have to leave. Um, we talked about, oh yeah, and price range. Um, the price range of the houses for some neighborhoods. The city that's right next to me, I got a lot of cities next to me. Grosse Pointe, and some of you may have heard of from the movie. Um, Old Rich, Old Money on the Lake.
Mhm.
Awesome, awesome. $6,500 a year in taxes. St. Clair Shores. Well, I moved here a long time ago. So my taxes are like 2,400, but somebody else buying into a new house, their taxes might be 3,500, 4,000.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing that you want to look at. How do your taxes based? In Michigan, we have the homestead exemption. So
Mhm.
if you own or occupy a house, you pay less money in taxes.
Right, and that's good to check into,
Oh
is
yeah.
what kind of exemptions are available and what are the parameters of those exemptions? Because like you said, in Grosse Pointe, your taxes could be $6,500 a year, and that's on maybe a house that's 500,000, we're not talking about the $1 million homes there.
300,000
You know,
maybe.
um, and the exemptions are really important. If this is going to be a investment, you know, into your long-term future, which you hope any real estate is going to be an investment for you so that it's going to mature and, gain value rather than lose value. And so with the housing market going up and down, you always kind of have to take that into consideration too.
Well, that's a good point. Now, historically, from my knowledge, house prices have never permanently decreased.
Exactly. They go up and down, but they don't ever permanently decrease.
However, I was around in the crash of 2008.
Mm-hmm.
They plummeted and they stayed down there a while. There were a
A
lot of
long
factors
time.
going on. I mean, the lenders were going crazy. The lenders just got done selling what's considered toxic mortgages, and then some that aren't considered toxic mortgages that are pretty toxic. And the lenders weren't doing a good job explaining it to the customers. And
Absolutely.
they felt, well, I get paid to close the loans. The customer called and asked for this loan, so I'm signing them up for it. I'm sending them the disclosure. They can read it if they want.
Mm-hmm.
But those ended up very dangerous. I mean, I think we were talking about loan programs before, but those particular loan programs were dangerous because you could get real payment shock if you were paying a minimum payment and then all of a sudden your loan recast. That was pretty, and that's a pretty dangerous thing. And then what happened was so many people got into loans at teaser interest rates. It's like, yep, you want this? Yeah, nice shiny object. How would you like 1% interest? Oh, I would love 1% interest. But then what they didn't realize, and I don't think the lenders really thought about it either, the lenders who were promoting these products big time, they didn't think about so many of the loans that got switched over from an interest only to a principal and interest based on the going interest rate. They didn't really take into consideration what that would do to unsuspecting people, because that loan that I'm talking about, it's a payment option arm, adjustable rate mortgage. And I remember them advertising that as for the sophisticated borrower.
Right.
And I read I read the features and benefits, and I was like, I'm a master of business and I've been in the mortgage business for a long time, and I'm not sophisticated enough for that one. I mean, because that one was really beneficial for people who could move money and had different investments, and had people who could look at all that stuff and, no, you're going to do this loan and you're going to take the rest of the money. And it could work, but that's not how they were selling it. They were selling, these different kinds of loans to people and they weren't explaining it to them. They were expecting the customers to be aware, and some of the laws have changed a bit, but it's always a good idea to know what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm. I
And what
think.
ended up happening was a lot of people they had no idea. I had people calling me desperately looking to refinance. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
remember when I told you not to get that loan? I can't help you now.
Right. That was such a big thing with those, and you had a time limit on a lot of them. For 3 years you would have an adjustable rate. And then if you weren't savvy enough to recognize that, oh, at that 3-year mark, guess what? It goes to a much higher rate, and your payment is going to be $1,000 more than what you anticipated. Or, some of them had back end loans where that you didn't pay anything on that second mortgage that made it, 100% financing, and you didn't pay anything on that second mortgage for the first 10 years. And then all of a sudden, boom, you've got this balloon payment that's due. You have
Yes.
no idea, I mean, there was so many variations that were out. And if you didn't have an attorney and you didn't have a financial advisor and you didn't have an accountant, I guarantee you, you could have, pretty much lost your shirt on all of that
And,
just
and,
because of all the changes and variations.
and so what the lenders were doing once those products were going bad, they were snatching up the houses, and there was tax laws that made it so that they would charge more to redeem the house to the homeowner.
Hmm.
They would charge
Yes.
to sell it outright.
Yeah.
I mean, there was tax benefits to the lenders.
To the lenders. There were investors during that time that were savvy, were really, able to um go in there and buy up a house that the owner could not redeem for, 100,000. They were able to buy it up for 25,000.
Unless the lender didn't want the house. In
But
that case,
it,
they would give it,
yeah.
away to.
I talked about the houses that were behind us in this homeowner association. During that time, these were $750,000 houses. During that time, these houses were selling for 150 to 175,000.
Well, and then I think the lenders learned a lesson. I mean, all for-profit business is for profit, so
Hmm.
their fiduciary responsibility is increase shareholder wealth at any cost. Um, what ended up happening, and they didn't care about displacing homeowners.
No.
Okay, so but what ended up happening is they were very narrow-minded and profit at any cost.
Hmm.
And because of the tax laws, that means the homeowner couldn't stay in, but so I could buy it for less.
Right.
Um, and then that created the mortgage meltdown in 2008, because they were just like, okay, you're out of here. Okay, you're out of here. Judges were literally stamping foreclosures for, I even heard stories for people who didn't have any mortgage. That's how messed up it was. Their
It
whole
was bad.
reporting system. But the bottom line is the flood of houses on the market during that time. It reduced prices. I mean, market demand. You increase supply, and your demand stays the same, so your prices plummet.
Yeah.
And then so I mean, the lenders were, I think, very responsible with their with the foreclosures and what the way they did things. The lenders had a lot to do with the plummeting real estate, which snowballed for what, I don't know, a year or two. And everything's more than better now. But if you were in one of those situations where you had one of those funky loans, or even if it's not too funky of a loan, just a standard adjustable rate, 3 years, and it could go up, you got a cap, but it could go up 6%, sometimes
Hmm.
5%, 6%. Um, and you prepare for it, that's okay. But the people weren't thinking about it. They weren't prepared for it. They lost their houses, and the real estate went down.
And that's
So
the big one. They weren't prepared for it because they didn't understand what it was. It wasn't clear. It wasn't concise. I mean, really, we could probably all do a class action lawsuit in regards to that, if the people who lost their homes during that time. But um, I digress. Um, we are running out of time for this section. And so we'll take a break here in just a few minutes and come back. And I'd like to actually ask you about the National Association of Realtors and the lawsuit that has just come to light on that. And we can maybe talk about that a little bit in this next section.
perfect.
All right, we'll see you there.